Have you ever felt a silence so deep it screamed? Not the peaceful kind, but one filled with emptiness, fatigue, and a voice inside that says, "Nothing matters anymore." If you've known this kind of silence, if you've stared at the ceiling for hours without energy to move, then this message is for you. Because Carl Jung didn't see depression as weakness, chemical imbalance, or broken wiring. He saw it as a cry from the soul, a signal that something vital has been lost, buried beneath expectations, routines, and a life unlived. And what he discovered might change everything you thought you knew about your pain. So if you're ready to understand the deeper meaning behind your silence, depression doesn't announce itself with drama. It creeps in slowly, first as tiredness, then as apathy, until one day you wake up and realize the world feels distant, muted, like you're watching life through thick glass. Most modern approaches treat depression as an illness, something to be fixed with medication, therapy, or positive thinking. But Carl Jung saw it differently. To him, depression was not a malfunction. It was a message, a call from the unconscious demanding attention. He once said, "Depression is like a foreign substance that has fallen into the psyche and must be worked on." Jung believed that when we fall into the depths of depression, we are being asked to stop, to turn inward, to listen. Because, buried beneath the numbness and exhaustion is something essential, something the conscious mind has ignored for too long. Imagine your psyche as a vast inner landscape. Some parts are sunny, active, familiar. Others lie in shadow, forgotten, neglected, or even rejected. Depression, according to Jung, is the psyche's way of forcing us to descend into those dark places, not to punish us, but to guide us toward what we've lost. He often described it as a form of introversion turned pathological. When we repress emotions, ignore our true needs, or live out of alignment with our inner truth, the energy meant for growth turns inward. It builds pressure, until one day the mind collapses under its own weight. But collapse is not always destruction. Sometimes it is initiation. Jung understood this firsthand. He walked through his own abyss, years of intense psychological crisis after his break with Freud. In that time, he faced visions, voices, and terrifying dreams. But instead of resisting them, he listened. And through that descent, he found meaning. He learned that the soul does not speak in logic. It speaks in symbols, in feelings, in moods. And depression, he realized, is one of the loudest languages the unconscious knows. So, if you've ever wondered why you feel nothing, why motivation won't return, why joy seems like a distant memory, know this: your psyche is trying to tell you something. Are you ready to listen? Stay with me. Because next, we'll uncover how Jung approached the inner world of depression, and why facing the darkness may be the only path forward. When someone is caught in the grip of depression, the world often responds with impatience. Snap out of it. Just be positive. Others have it worse. But Jung knew that depression isn't laziness or weakness. It's exhaustion from carrying a burden too long ignored. He saw it as a necessary descent, one that, if understood and honored, could lead to profound transformation. You see, most people try to escape depression. They reach for distractions, medications, affirmations, anything to feel better fast. But Jung invited his patients to do something radical. Go deeper. Not to wallow in suffering, but to meet it consciously, because buried beneath the numbness is energy, blocked emotion, lost meaning, and sometimes even purpose. In Jungian psychology, depression often signals a confrontation with the shadow, that part of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or never allowed to exist. It might be anger we were told not to feel, a dream we abandoned, a truth we silenced to fit in. And when those parts remain unconscious, they fester, draining vitality, clouding thought, and leaving behind a silence so loud it drowns out everything else. Jung once worked with a man who had lost all motivation. He couldn't get out of bed, found no joy in life, and felt utterly disconnected from everyone around him. Instead of trying to pull him out, Jung helped him descend. They explored his dreams, filled with images of dark forests, forgotten temples, and ancient figures calling him by name. Together, they uncovered a deep longing. This man had once wanted to be an artist, but his family had pressured him into a stable career. Over time, he buried that desire, until one day, his soul rebelled. The depression wasn't madness. It was mourning. Mourning the loss of his true self. Only when he began painting again, not to succeed, but to reconnect with what had been silenced, did the darkness begin to shift. Not disappear, but change. Because healing doesn't always mean light. Sometimes it means understanding why the darkness came in the first place. Jung believed that depression often arises when we live a life that isn't truly ours, when we wear masks too long, when we ignore the call of our inner world. He called this the unlived life, the sum of all the choices we didn't make, the truths we didn't speak, the parts of us we disowned to survive. And that unlived life doesn't stay quiet forever. It returns, in dreams, in moods, in silence so heavy it becomes unbearable. So, if you're in that silence now, know this: it's not meaningless, it's not broken, it's calling you home. Stay with me, because next we'll explore how Jung approached the actual process of healing depression, and why facing your inner world may be the key to finding yourself again. Depression doesn't just steal joy, it steals identity. One day you wake up and realize you no longer recognize yourself. You've lost the thread of who you were, what you wanted, and even why you used to care. Jung understood this deeply. He saw depression not as a disorder, but as a rupture in the relationship between the ego and the unconscious, a fracture that leaves the soul fragmented and the self ungrounded. So how do we begin to mend that fracture? Through what Jung called active imagination, a practice where you enter into dialogue with your inner world, not as an observer, but as a participant. You don't fight the silence, you sit with it, you ask it questions, and slowly, if you listen closely enough, it begins to answer. In one case, a woman came to Jung after years of numbness. She described her life as a fog that never lifted. She had everything society told her she should want: a good job, a family, stability. Yet none of it felt real. Jung didn't rush to fix her. Instead, he asked, "What part of you have you forgotten?" She began painting images that came to her in dreams, strange, symbolic, filled with fire and water, birth and destruction. At first, they made no sense, but over time, patterns emerged. She was painting her own transformation. The fire was rage she'd never allowed herself to feel. The water was grief buried beneath years of compliance. And at the center of it all, a woman, rising, not healed, not perfect, but finally seen. That's the power of active imagination. It allows the unconscious to speak in its own language, not logic, but image, not reason, but symbol. Because healing from depression isn't about thinking your way out. It's about feeling your way through. It's about giving voice to the parts of you that have been silenced for too long. And most importantly, it's about reclaiming the meaning that depression tried to steal. Jung believed that meaning doesn't come from external success or positive affirmations. It comes from connection to yourself, to your purpose, to the story only you can live. He once said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." So if you're asking yourself, what's the point right now? Know this. Your question is not weakness. It is wisdom. Because only when we begin to question the emptiness do we open ourselves to something deeper. And that's where healing starts. But Jung also knew something many avoid. Sometimes the only way forward is to go deeper. Not away from the pain, but into it. Because buried beneath the numbness lies energy, blocked, suppressed, waiting to be acknowledged. And when we finally allow ourselves to feel it, to name it, to face it, something shifts. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, but it shifts. You begin to see your depression not as an enemy, but as a guide. A harsh one, yes, a painful one, but a guide nonetheless. Because it brought you here, to the edge of something new, to the threshold of transformation. Stay with me, because next we'll reveal the final key to healing according to Carl Jung. And it might surprise you. At the heart of Jung's work lies a radical truth. Depression is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of a deeper journey. Most people want to escape their pain as quickly as possible. And who can blame them? Depression is exhausting, isolating, and at times unbearable. But Jung knew that true healing doesn't come from escaping the darkness. It comes from understanding it. He believed that depression often marks the start of what he called the process of individuation, the lifelong journey toward becoming your fullest, most authentic self. It begins when the ego, the part of you that thinks, plans, and controls, can no longer hold everything together. When life collapses under the weight of unspoken truths, and in that collapse, something new has the chance to emerge. Jung described this as a kind of psychological death and rebirth, not metaphorical, literal. Because when you lose your sense of meaning, your motivation, even your identity, you are, in a way, dying. But from that death, if you allow it, a new self can be born. Not one built on expectations or illusions, but one rooted in depth, awareness, and inner truth. This is why Jung never rushed his patients out of depression. He didn't see it as a malfunction to be fixed, but as a necessary initiation into a more conscious way of being. He once said, "There is no birth of the self without the death of the self." That may sound intense, even frightening, but think about it. How many times in life do we need to let go of who we were in order to become who we are meant to be? The student must die for the adult to rise. The child must fall away for the parent to emerge. The old dream must end so a new one can begin. And sometimes, the only way to find yourself again is to lose everything first. That's what depression does. It strips you bare. It leaves you with nothing but silence. But in that silence, if you stay long enough, you might hear something unexpected, not just emptiness, but also stillness, not just numbness, but also clarity. And beneath it all, a whisper. You are here. Now listen. So, what do you do now? Jung would say, engage with your suffering consciously. Don't try to run from it. Don't force positivity. Don't shame yourself for feeling lost. Instead, ask, what part of me has been ignored? What truth have I refused to face? What unlived life is calling me now? Then create space for those questions. Write them down. Paint them. Speak them aloud. Dream them. Let your unconscious speak, through symbols, through emotions, through the stories that rise when everything else falls away. Because healing is not about returning to who you were before the silence. It's about discovering who you are because of it. And when you finally stand face to face with your deepest pain, not to fix it, but to understand it, something changes. You stop fearing the silence. You begin to trust it. You learn that not all quiet is empty. Some silence is sacred, and within it, you may find not just survival, but transformation. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If any part of this resonated with you, if it gave you a new understanding of your pain, share this video. Let someone else know they are not alone. Remember to like, subscribe, and join the Inner Mirror community, because this journey doesn't end here. The silence still has more to say, and together we will keep listening.